Amen. Praise God. That was some amazing worship. I'm hoping you're enjoying yourself. At this time, we're going to ask Erika to come and give us a testimony. The Bible says in Revelations, they overcame by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. And that's why we're doing this. We're asking you guys to listen closely to what God is doing in the lives of our people. And we're asking people to come each week and give a testimony. So I'll ask Miss Erika to come up.
So I'm Miss Erika. And I was born in Ray, Colorado, May 21st, 1980. My family moved back to California, where both of my parents worked at Metro State Hospital in Norwalk, California. I have an older sister that is almost 7 years older than me. But when I was 2 years old, my little sister Colleen was born. She had some serious health issues that the doctors couldn't figure out. She wasn't growing, was legally blind, and so much more. My mom started taking her to a lot of specialists, even out of state. My dad took care of me often in those early years. My earliest memory was hearing that the doctors didn't think she would live past 2. I remember crying in my room on her 2nd birthday, thinking that I wasn't going to see her again. A year later, my mom was assisting a patient she thought was in trouble and was severely beaten by the patient. She was in the hospital for a long time and had permanent damage. She could no longer go upstairs to my room. My dad loved us, but wasn't the warm and fuzzy dad. So at age 5, I began taking care of myself. I learned at that early age not to rock the boat or make things harder. So I tucked myself in at night and learned to read myself bedtime stories. Books and my imaginary friend kept me company. My imaginary friend came to me in my dreams and would comfort me. I excelled at reading and writing and was even sent to a 4th grade class for reading in 1st grade. However, I struggled in organization, focus, and this affected my other areas. I would sit in for recess every day because I would do the wrong homework. I tried really hard, but I kept getting mixed up on what I was supposed to do. In 5th grade, my dad was offered employee housing on the grounds of the state hospital. It wasn't far from my apartment building, but I had to change schools. Our neighbors were Henry and Elizabeth Wales. They became my adoptive grandparents because I didn't see mine very often. And most of their grandchildren were still in Canada. He was the chaplain for the hospital, and she would take me to her church in Whittier sometimes. I enjoyed the stories, but I had no context. I had never even held a Bible before. In 5th grade, we finally got answers for my struggles in school. My teacher recommended testing, so I went through extensive IQ, language, and even physical testing, and the results said auditory dyslexia, dysgraphia, and ADHD, as well as some spinal issues due to a fall from a slide when I was 3. They recommended special education services for me. I received adaptive PE and OT, but my mom kept my diagnosis and the special education recommendation from me. So in junior high, I discovered that I was very capable in school with the right teachers. For the first time ever, I excelled academically and was signed up for honors courses. But around 8th grade, I became very angry with my parents. They were rarely around, and their relationship had drastically changed. So I tried skipping school, experimented with drugs, and tried anything to get their attention. By the end of junior high, I was selling drugs out of my lunchbox. By high school, I had moved on to regularly drinking, harder drugs, throwing huge parties, and dating guys in prison. My sister was now in junior high and had a new best friend, Christina Montez. In 11th grade, they joined me at the high school, and we all became friends. They did a video project for school and were filming me to test out the camera. I was barefoot, hair piled on my hair, eating a big bowl of Fruit Loops and watching Korean soap operas with the subtitles on. And Christina's brother, Gabe, saw the video and obviously said, "I have to meet her." We went on our first date on Valentine's Day in 1997. A week later, my parents told me they were getting a divorce. I moved with my mom and my little sister to Downey, California. That November, Gabe asked me to marry him, and I said yes. I had always said that I would never get married, but I felt strongly this was right. He said that he wanted to ask his childhood pastor, who he was named after, to marry us. You heard the story of Pastor Lee from my father-in-law Joe a few weeks ago. He was a felon and drug addict that was saved and came to the Lord. We went to his church and he was sharing his amazing testimony that day. He talked about his Lord and Savior making him clean. I then realized that my childhood friend that came to me in my dreams now had a name, Jesus Christ. I gave my life to the Lord instantly. I was baptized with Gabe, his mom, his sister, and his brother the next month. And Gabe and I stopped partying and spent most of our free time sitting on the beach and planning our life. After talking about our views on marriage, Pastor Lee actually suggested that we move our wedding date up to 6 months away instead of a year away. This ended up being a great decision because my parents' divorce got pretty ugly by the time the wedding came around. I was still extremely nervous about marriage, but I was determined to be different than my parents. So I turned 18 in May, graduated in June, and we were married July 25th, 1998, at Joy Christian Center in Jordy, California. We lived in a little tiny one-bedroom apartment in Downey, California, and drove to church in Jordy every Sunday. I began working as a plastic factory assembly where my father-in-law was a manager, and a few weeks later I was promoted to an inventory control clerk. I worked in the office connected to the warehouse and down the street from the main office. Some coworkers asked me to help teach them English. I agreed if they taught me Spanish. So we started having Bible lessons and teaching each other at lunch. 6 months later, we were expecting Caitlin. I told everyone that I felt like I needed to stay home with her. Everyone insisted that that was impossible financially. However, Gabe got a job with the County of Los Angeles as an examiner and was making what we both had been making combined. We got that first paycheck the day I went on maternity leave. We also received full benefits. I was able to stay home with my kids for 14 years. Caitlin Elizabeth, named after my adopted grandma, was born in October 1999. 8 months later, we were expecting Elijah. We moved to Bellflower, California, and he was born 3 weeks later. We lived there for less than 9 months before 9/11 happened. Gabe felt called to join the military. He didn't graduate high school and had to go back to get his GED. During that process, we found out we were expecting baby number 3. Shortly after, I had a miscarriage. In May of 2003, he left for Fort Benning in Georgia. Later that day, my doctor called me to tell me that I was pregnant. A few weeks later, the kids and I moved in with my dad. Gabe didn't know about the baby for 3 whole months. He was then medically discharged because of his feet, and we lived with my dad until Sydney Grace was born. We then moved to Buena Park, California. Gabe went back to work in the same field, but as a supervisor for a private title company. Shortly after hire, they switched him to nights. He was gone 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. every day. In 2005, we found out we were pregnant with Alexis. During that time, Pastor Lee passed away. The church changed a lot, and it was getting harder to drive all the way to Jordan. Lexi was born in 2006, and 4 kids in a 2-bedroom apartment was getting cramped. So I was still staying home because Lexi wasn't at school yet. We moved to a house in Fullerton, California. And the dogs begged for a dog, so we adopted a little terrier named Ginger. At a year old, Ginger was playing with the kids outside and had a seizure. We rushed her to the hospital, but she didn't survive. Caitlin, who was 10 at the time, said, "We need to find a church." I had a flyer in my Bible from a fall festival, so we decided to try out Wilshire Avenue Church in Fullerton. And Enoch Yousling was the first person we met and made us feel very welcome. So we slowly began to serve there. Gabe started teaching Sunday school, and I assisted him. Pastor Kirk asked us to join his small group, and we became great friends. Through that friendship, we learned of other ways to grow and signed up for a leadership class called L3. So it was a year-long leadership class that stretched us spiritually and taught us how to write our testimony. We then began facilitating this class while taking the 2nd year. During this time, Gabe was going to school for youth ministry, but kept saying he had no idea why. We moved back to Buena Park, and I was ready to go back to work. I had a test scheduled for the Buena Park School District. I had been volunteering for many years as a PTO president for my kid's school. 2 days before the test, my dog and my new rescue dog got in a fight. My lip was bit off, and I had to be reattached by 40 stitches by a plastic surgeon. The morning of the test, a drawer in the bathroom was left open, and we couldn't open the door. Our keys, purse, phones, and my pain meds were in there. We tried everything to open the door, but nothing worked. I was in tears and began to pray for God's will in the situation. I picked up a pencil and gently pushed it on the drawer. It closed and the door opened. I made it to my test just on time and passed it with flying colors. I began to sub for the Buena Park School District and ended up subbing as a special education instructional assistant. I didn't have any experience in special ed, besides volunteering at the Special Olympics, but I loved it. Eventually, I became a permanent employee and decided I didn't want to finish my teaching degree that I had been working on for years. I decided there was a lot that happened on that playground pushing the kids on the swings, and I understood their frustrations because I was that child. By the end of L3, Gabe knew he was called to be a pastor, but I wasn't sure what was next for me in ministry. My mom was just diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's, and it was hard for me to even move forward in anything. For us, Gabe will usually have tons of ideas that he gets so excited about. Then God will give me a dream with a missing piece that tells him that it's the right path. Gabe kept saying he felt called to do something and he was restless with it. Then the dream happened. I told him we were supposed to do prayer walks. He talked to his mentor and he said we would either find a need in our city or the ministry that we were looking for by seeing what others are doing. So we started out prayer walks every month, praying for a different part of our city. During these walks, we felt called to go look at other churches. So we took a few months break from teaching and had a list of churches. We visited one, but it wasn't the right fit. Then Pastor Brian asked us to fill in for him at the OC United Gala. At the last minute, the district attorney pulled up the Way Fellowship. I told Gabe, I know them. I worked with them at Whitaker when I was PTO president. We need to go to that church tomorrow. So we showed up, and Pastor Don said, hey, I know you. Kids went to youth group saying, we're just here to check stuff out. We emailed Pastor Don later that day and said, we found our home. How can we serve? 3 years later, Gabe has been ordained as one of the assistant pastors. I'm now the children's ministry lead. I didn't grow up in the church or own a Bible until I was 17 years old. However, when I look back at that lonely child with her imaginary friend, there's absolutely no doubt that God always had a plan for me. He was with me even when I didn't know his name. He has stretched me and grown me into a person that can be that friend for so many children.